The palace of Aurelion floated above the sapphire clouds like a shard of crystal frozen in the sky. Thousands of spires pierced the atmosphere of the royal world, glowing with the soft blue energy of gravitic engines. Beneath the palace stretched an endless city of silver towers and radiant bridges where millions of beings lived under the rule of the Aurelian Empire. It was the most powerful civilization in this sector of the galaxy. Yet on this particular morning, the most powerful woman in that empire stood completely confused. Queen Lytheria of Aurelion sat upon her throne, her silver crown reflecting the pale light of the twin suns outside the palace windows. She was known throughout the galaxy as a brilliant ruler and a fearsome strategist. Entire star systems had surrendered simply because she had looked in their direction. But today her expression held something unfamiliar: concern. Before her stood 3 royal advisors, 2 palace physicians, and the captain of the royal guard. They all looked equally uneasy. The reason was simple. The princess. Princess Aelira sat quietly near the far wall of the throne chamber, surrounded by attendants and floating holographic toys meant to entertain her. She ignored all of them. The young princess was only 7 cycles old, but she had already become the center of a mystery that troubled the entire empire. Because the princess had never spoken a word. Not once. The finest doctors in the galaxy had examined her. Alien neurologists from a dozen advanced civilizations had run every possible scan. Yet every result said the same thing. She was perfectly healthy. There was no damage to her brain. No injury to her vocal cords. No genetic disorder. Yet the princess remained silent. Queen Lytheria's gaze drifted toward her daughter. Princess Aelira sat cross-legged on the polished floor, gently spinning a floating light orb between her fingers. Her large silver eyes were calm. Too calm. Children her age usually ran through the halls, laughing, shouting, asking endless questions. But Aelira rarely made any sound at all. And that frightened the queen more than any enemy fleet ever had. "Your Majesty," one of the physicians said cautiously, "we have performed every possible diagnostic again this morning." Queen Lytheria did not turn. "And?" The physician hesitated. "There is still nothing wrong with the princess." The throne room grew silent. The captain of the guard shifted uncomfortably. The queen's fingers tightened slightly around the armrest of her throne. "Then explain," she said quietly, "why my daughter has never spoken." No one answered. Because no one had an answer. For 7 years the empire had searched for one. 7 years of silence. Suddenly the chamber doors opened with a low mechanical hum. A palace attendant hurried inside and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, the new technician has arrived." The queen frowned slightly. "Technician?" "Yes, Your Majesty. The one assigned to repair the palace energy conduits." Queen Lytheria exhaled slowly. Even royal palaces needed maintenance. The floating city used millions of energy lines, gravity stabilizers, and shield generators. Technicians came and went constantly. "Send him in," she said absent-mindedly. The attendant bowed again and stepped aside. A moment later a human walked into the throne chamber. He looked ordinary. That alone made several nobles in the room wrinkle their noses. Humans were still relatively new members of the galactic community. They came from a dangerous death world with unstable weather, aggressive wildlife, and gravity stronger than most civilized planets. Because of that, humans were often hired for difficult physical work. Repairs. Exploration. Dangerous jobs others preferred to avoid. The man walking toward the throne looked like exactly that type of worker. He wore a simple gray technician uniform with grease stains along one sleeve. A small toolkit hung from his belt. His dark hair was slightly messy as if he had been working all morning. When he reached the center of the room, he stopped and gave a respectful nod. "Your Majesty." His voice was calm, unintimidated. Several nobles exchanged irritated glances. Most beings trembled when standing before Queen Lytheria. This human did not. "What is your name?" the queen asked. "Ethan Carter." "Your assignment?" "Energy conduit maintenance for the eastern wing of the palace." The queen nodded slightly. "Then why are you in my throne chamber?" Ethan scratched the back of his neck. "Because one of the main power conduits runs directly beneath this room. The captain of the guard frowned. You expect us to believe that? Ethan shrugged. You can check the schematics. One of the palace engineers quickly pulled up a holographic display. After a moment he cleared his throat. He is correct, Your Majesty. Queen Lytheria sighed softly. Very well. Complete your repairs quickly. Ethan nodded and began walking toward a maintenance panel along the far wall. That was when something unusual happened. Princess Alira stopped playing with her floating orb. Her silver eyes lifted slowly and locked onto the human. Across the vast throne chamber, she stared at him, completely still. One of the attendants noticed first. Your Majesty. Queen Lytheria followed the attendant's gaze. Her eyes widened slightly, because the princess never paid attention to strangers. In fact, she rarely paid attention to anything at all. Yet now she was watching the human technician with intense focus. Ethan knelt beside the maintenance panel and opened it, revealing a cluster of glowing energy conduits. He began working with quiet efficiency, unaware of the royal attention suddenly focused on him. But Princess Alira continued watching. Her eyes never moved. 1 minute passed. Then 2. The queen leaned forward slightly. Alira? The princess did not respond. Her gaze remained fixed on Ethan. The attendants exchanged confused looks. Then something even stranger happened. The princess slowly stood up. She rarely moved without being guided by her caretakers. But now she walked forward on her own, step by step across the vast throne room. The guards stiffened. Your Majesty. Queen Lytheria raised a hand. Let her go. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the silent princess walked directly toward the human technician. Ethan was still adjusting a glowing conduit when he sensed movement beside him. He glanced up and froze, because the princess of the Aurelian Empire was standing less than a meter away, looking directly at him. Ethan blinked. Well, hi. The princess said nothing. She simply stared. Her large silver eyes seemed almost curious. Queen Lytheria slowly rose from her throne. What is she doing? No one answered, because no one had ever seen the princess behave like this before. Ethan looked slightly nervous now. Is this okay? The captain of the guard stepped forward. Do not speak to the princess. Ethan raised his hands. Right. Sorry. But the princess didn't move away. She simply sat down beside him, cross-legged, like a quiet observer, and continued watching him work. The throne room fell completely silent. Even the hum of the palace engine seemed quieter somehow. Minutes passed. Ethan continued repairing the conduit while the princess watched every movement carefully. Finally, the queen walked down the steps of her throne. Her long royal cloak flowed behind her as she approached them. When she reached the pair, she studied the strange scene before her. Her silent daughter, sitting beside a human technician, watching him like he was the most interesting thing in the universe. Queen Lytheria folded her arms slowly. Her voice was calm, but filled with genuine confusion. Human. Ethan looked up again. Yes, Your Majesty? The queen gestured toward the princess. Why does my daughter only look at you? Ethan blinked. He looked at the princess, then back at the queen. I have absolutely no idea. The princess tilted her head slightly, still watching him. For the first time in 7 years, the silent princess of Aurelion had found something interesting, and no one in the room understood why. The throne room remained silent long after Ethan finished repairing the conduit. Princess Alira still sat beside him, watching. When Ethan finally closed the maintenance panel and stood up, he noticed something strange. The princess stood up too. At first he thought it was coincidence. But when he began walking toward the exit corridor, she followed. The guards exchanged alarmed looks. Your Majesty, the captain whispered nervously. Queen Lytheria narrowed her eyes. The princess had never followed anyone before, not even her own attendants. Yet now she walked directly behind the human technician like a quiet shadow. Ethan stopped awkwardly. The princess stopped too. He turned. She tilted her head, still staring at him with those calm silver eyes. This is weird, Ethan muttered under his breath. The queen approached slowly. Alira. The princess didn't react. Her attention never left Ethan. "Daughter," the queen repeated more firmly. Still nothing. Then Ethan stepped sideways slightly. The princess instantly adjusted her position to keep him in her line of sight. The throne room erupted into murmurs. "What is happening? This has never occurred before. Why him?" Queen Lytheria raised her hand, silencing everyone. She studied the human carefully now. "You," she said calmly. "Yes, your majesty?" Ethan replied nervously. "Continue walking." Ethan blinked. Okay." He took a step. The princess followed. Another step. She followed again. The queen's expression hardened with deep curiosity. "Elira." "Nothing." "Princess." "Nothing." Then the queen said something she had never asked anyone before. "Human, please sit down." Ethan hesitated, but he obeyed. The moment he sat on a nearby bench, Princess Elira walked forward and sat beside him again, exactly as she had earlier, watching him quietly. The queen stared. For 7 years her daughter had lived in silence, detached from everything. Yet now, she refused to leave this human's side. And no one understood why. Part 3, The Man from the Death World. Over the next several days, the palace fell into complete confusion, because the princess continued following Ethan everywhere. If he worked in the engineering halls, she sat beside him. If he repaired gravity stabilizers in the western wing, she watched. If he ate lunch in the maintenance sector, she sat quietly beside him the entire time. The royal court began whispering. Some nobles were horrified. A human near the princess every day? This is unacceptable. But Queen Lytheria did not stop it, because something remarkable had started happening. Princess Elira had begun showing emotions. Tiny ones, but real. Sometimes when Ethan explained what he was fixing, her eyes widened slightly. Sometimes when he accidentally dropped a tool, her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. The palace physicians were stunned. "She is responding," one reported excitedly. "More in 1 week than in the last 7 years." The queen watched it all carefully. Every day, quietly observing the strange friendship. One evening she summoned Ethan privately. He stood before her again in the throne room, looking slightly nervous. "You wish to see me, your majesty?" "Yes." The queen studied him carefully. "You understand the entire palace is now asking the same question." Ethan sighed. "Why the princess keeps following me?" "Correct." He shrugged helplessly. "I honestly don't know." The queen leaned forward. "What kind of world did you come from, human?" "Earth." "A death world." "Technically, yes." The queen's voice softened slightly. "I have studied your species. Should I be worried?" Ethan asked. "Perhaps." She stood slowly. "Humans evolved in extreme conditions." "True." "High gravity." "Yep." "Constant predators." "Unfortunately." "And violent climates." "Also correct." The queen looked directly into his eyes. "Such environments produce unusual survival instincts." Ethan frowned slightly. "Where is this going?" "Some species develop heightened empathy." "Okay." "Others develop strong protective instincts." "Sounds about right." Then the queen asked the question that had been troubling her. "Do humans feel a strong urge to protect children?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Even alien children?" He shrugged. "Kids are kids." The queen slowly turned her gaze toward the distant balcony where the princess often watched the stars. "Perhaps that is the answer." But the real reason was far stranger than either of them realized. Part 4, The Hidden Danger. 3 weeks later, the palace alarm screamed. Red lights flashed across the sky above Aurelion. Enemy ships had appeared from hyperspace. An entire fleet. The Royal Command Center erupted into chaos. Unknown vessels entering orbit. Energy signatures locked on the palace. Queen Lytheria's voice cut through the panic. "Identify them." An officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Your Majesty, they are Varkathi warships." The room went silent. The Varkathi Empire was one of the few powers that rivaled Aurelion, and they had come with an invasion fleet. Missiles began falling from the sky. The palace shields activated instantly. But another alarm sounded. Intruders inside the palace. What? Teleport signatures detected. The enemy had sent assassins. Their target was obvious. The princess. In the quiet garden wing of the palace, Ethan was tightening a loose panel on a fountain pump. Princess Alira sat nearby as usual, watching. Then Ethan heard distant explosions. He looked up. Uh-oh. The princess tilted her head. Then the garden doors exploded inward. 5 armored Varkathi soldiers stormed inside. Their weapons immediately aimed at the princess. Ethan's mind reacted instantly. Deathworld reflexes. He stepped directly in front of her. The soldiers laughed. A human technician? Move aside. Ethan didn't move. Behind him, the princess quietly grabbed the back of his shirt. The soldiers advanced. One raised his weapon. And that was when Ethan moved. Faster than anyone expected. His wrench flew through the air like a projectile. It smashed into the soldier's helmet. Before the others could react, Ethan grabbed the fallen weapon and fired. 2 soldiers dropped instantly. The remaining 3 rushed him. They were trained killers. But they had never fought a human. A species evolved for survival on a death world. The fight was brutal. Fast. Chaotic. In less than 30 seconds. All 5 assassins lay unconscious on the floor. Ethan stood breathing heavily. Bruised. Bleeding. But alive. Behind him, the princess still held his shirt tightly. Palace guards burst into the garden moments later. Weapons ready. They froze at the sight. 5 elite Varkathi assassins. Defeated by a maintenance technician. Then Queen Lytheria arrived. Her eyes widened as she saw Ethan standing protectively in front of her daughter. And the princess, still holding on to him. Like she had known this would happen. Part 5. The princess finally speaks. Later that night, the palace was secure again. The invasion had been repelled. Queen Lytheria stood quietly in the royal medical chamber. Ethan sat on a bed while doctors treated his injuries. Princess Alira sat beside him. As always, the queen approached slowly. You saved her life. Ethan shrugged weakly. Seemed like the right thing to do. The queen looked at her daughter. Then at Ethan. Perhaps now I finally understand why she watches you. Ethan smiled slightly. Kids like mechanics? The queen almost laughed. Then something happened. A small voice echoed in the room. Soft, quiet, but unmistakable. Mom? Everyone froze. The doctor stopped moving. The guards stared in disbelief. Queen Lytheria slowly turned. Princess Alira looked up at her mother. And spoke again. Mom? Tears filled the queen's eyes instantly. 7 years of silence. Broken in a single moment. She knelt beside her daughter. Alira, you can speak. The princess nodded. Then she pointed at Ethan. And said something that stunned the entire room. He's safe. The queen blinked. Safe. The princess nodded again. Her voice still soft but certain. I could hear thoughts. The room went silent again. I heard everyone's thoughts, the princess continued. They were loud. Scary. Angry. She looked at Ethan. But his were quiet. Kind. Safe. The queen realized the truth instantly. Her daughter had been telepathic. All along. And the endless noise of other minds had frightened her into silence. Except one. The human. A mind strong enough to survive a death world. Yet calm enough to protect a child. Queen Lytheria slowly stood. Looking at Ethan with new understanding. So that is why my daughter only looked at you. Ethan scratched his head awkwardly. Because my brain is quiet? The princess smiled slightly. Yes. And for the first time in her life. Princess Alira laughed. And months later, the palace gardens were filled with laughter. Princess Alira ran freely among the fountains, speaking and playing like any child her age. And always nearby sat a human technician, now promoted to royal protector. Queen Lytheria watched them from the balcony, a small smile on her face. Perhaps, she said softly, the galaxy underestimated humans. Because sometimes, The quietest mind in the universe belonged to the strongest heart.